Welcome to the Drawing Board. I am your host and in-house artist, Erin Leffler. If you're not familiar with the Drawing Board, here's a quick recap of what happens on the show. Every episode of the Drawing Board, I invite a guest from the comics and entertainment industry, and we learn a little bit more about what they do. And while learning about what they do, I'm also drawing them. Pretty fun, right? Well, I'm really excited about my guest this week because he has done things in so many different facets that I'm pretty sure you all are going to be super excited about. He is a musician, an author, and an education advocate. Please welcome my guest, Coy Bowles. Hi there.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So for kids who may not know, because there were 3 different terms I used there, and each of them have their own special little thing, can you just describe a little bit of what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a musician. I play guitar, keys, and banjo, a bunch of different instruments. I guess you call me a multi-instrumentalist. I've been in the Zac Brown Band for the last 13, 14 years. So kind of from the very beginning, pretty amazing ride. Starting from the very beginning, playing in clubs with 100 people, 200 people, to playing sold out shows at Fenway multiple nights in a row, so pretty crazy life and rocket ship I've been on with that adventure. But during the process, I really wanted to use my voice to make a difference. And I taught kids guitar lessons for a really long time before I got to be a touring musician. So I got really interested in giving back to kids, and I'm a storyteller. So I started writing children's stories. I did my first book that I guess officially counts me to be an author. And then I'm on my 5th book that's about to come out now. And I've, over the course of the last 5 years, have been getting heavily into being a part of the education system and being a creative person to trying to create cool content for teachers and kids, and just be a part of the positive in that. That's what I've kind of used my voice at.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, with the Zac Brown Band, that's been quite an amazing journey and a long ride. And I can't imagine that it was an easy start either. But going back before that, how long were you doing this? Was this something that you were interested in since you were a kid, or did that come a little later?
Yeah, so my mom, when I was about 10 years old, said, you have to pick a hobby to do this summer so you don't get in trouble. And I didn't pick one, so she picked one for me. And it was guitar lessons. And I took 2 guitar lessons. This guy wanted me to learn how to play Coming Around the Mountain. And I was heavy into Nirvana and Pearl Jam and this whole Seattle scene that was breaking out. And I had long hair and dressed weird, and I rode skateboards. I grew up in a really small town in Georgia. So the way I dressed and looked when I was 10 and 11 years old was very different from everybody else. But I learned how to play Smells Like Teen Spirit as one of my first songs. And I quit guitar lessons and just basically, I was the only child living in the middle of a field on 30 acres, surrounded by thousands of other acres, kind of away from town. And I had to more or less keep myself busy. So guitar was a perfect instrument for me. But I always had this thing, and you might be able to relate how you can just kind of disappear into your art. When I was 11 years old, I would play what I thought would be 30 or 40 minutes, and it ended up being 3 or 4 hours. And my understanding of time would just completely lapse. I mean, I would have no idea how long I would have been doing something or practicing. And it's still to this day, I can sit down and start working on a song, and in my mind, it'll feel 30 or 40 minutes, and it'll be 5 hours, which is cool. I mean, it's a good trait to have.
That's incredible. And
Yeah.
That's a great way to get into it. Our parents are usually a good beginning stepping stone for getting into stuff.
Well, I have 2 old hippie parents. So they were all kinds of cool music was always playing. They were very supportive of me being cool and different. And they were always really, really into music themselves. So it was a lot of love and support. My parents have been married for since they were 18 and 19.
Wow.
And they're in their mid 60s now. So, I mean, and it was just a house filled with love and laughter. So I couldn't have had a better, more supportive childhood,
That's amazing.
Very, very lucky for that.
That's super amazing. And I always say that it's always wonderful to have such a great foundation with anything in this industry. So that's definitely a great foundation to start with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So for you as a musician, you've done different instruments, you've played different things, and I think that is absolutely wonderful. But we all kind of have like that inspiration, especially with music wise, that we just absolutely love. So who are some of those artists to you that you just absolutely adore, that you listen to, that you wanted to incorporate some of their style into your work?
Yeah, so it all happened to me with Pearl Jam. Alive was the first time that I ever had this kind of breakthrough moment. My mom was driving like a 80-something Toyota Corolla that was like gold colored. She was driving me back and forth to school in the morning, and one morning she said, I heard a song yesterday. You're going to freak out about it. Like, this guy has the coolest voice. You won't believe it. And I was like, sure, okay, cool, whatever, you know. But my mom and I jammed in the car a pretty good bit. I mean, I was the only child, so my mom was like a good friend of mine, you know? So we were in the car and she goes, this is it, this is it. And she turns it up and I hear the intro to Pearl Jam Alive. And then Eddie Vedder starts singing, you know, the and I just remember like the hair on my arm standing up and just kind of being like, I don't know what that is, but I want that to be around me all the time. And so I went and got the album, listened to it nonstop, would dream about playing on stage in a way, because at the time MTV was out and Pearl Jam's videos were live videos of them playing in clubs and theaters and stuff, and Eddie Vedder like swinging from the rafters and all of this. So I was just over the moon about it. But so that adventure turned into really getting into the power and the energy of rock and roll, which then later turned into getting into blues music, the Allman Brothers, which led into like B.B. King, Freddie King, Elmore James. And I went down, I'm a kind of a researcher, so I went down a long road of blues guys, which then eventually led me to Miles Davis and John Coltrane and the whole, the world of jazz. And I was about to graduate with a biology degree, and I did the dreadful phone call where I called my parents and was like, I think that I'm going to switch my major to music. And they were like, cool, all right. You know, but I've always had a really strong work ethic. So they weren't afraid of me like not working hard. So I was making C's in biology and about to graduate and switched to music and was making straight A's and graduated from Georgia State School of Music. Got out in the scene, met the Zac Brown Band, and started playing with them. And then the rest is, strap onto a rocket ship and hold on, you know?
That's really cool. And those are great music inspirations. I grew up loving blues music, so that's like amazing.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of different stuff. I think it's important. I mean, and specifically, the Zac Brown Band is known for being able to kind of conquer a lot of different genres. So it's been really, kind of a strength to be somebody who listens to a lot of different styles of music. I mean, I think the coolest part about this whole adventure is I had pictures of Nirvana hanging on my wall when I was a kid, and we've become friends with Dave Grohl and gotten to record an album with him called the Grohl Sessions. And he sat in with us a bunch of times. He's a buddy of mine now, and he's the coolest dude you'll ever meet in your whole life. Like, to meet your hero or somebody that you had posters on your wall when you were a kid, and them just be like even cooler than you thought they would be, and you actually be buddies with them. Like, we're buddies, to me, that's the part of it, of this journey and this ride that's been the most amazing. Like, we got to play with Chris Cornell before he passed away, and we did Saturday Night Live with him. And he showed up, was completely the most amazing pro guy, knew the song inside and out. We ran it 3 times. We nailed it every 3 times, or all 3 times. And then we were like, okay, well, I guess we're done. That was easy. And then so I went over to him and I was like, dude, you have no idea, that half of this band is freaked out right now that you're here and we're getting to do this. So, is it cool if we ask you questions, And he was like, sure. And we started asking him like legit questions about what their first album was like, and, and in detail and all this. And he was so laid back and so cool and answered all our questions. We probably talked to him for an hour and a half, just about what was it like, dude,
That's
Um,
incredible.
yeah, it was awesome. So
And
that's probably been the coolest part of the whole journey is studying all of this music, it being such a huge part of your personal life, you know, as a kid and as a growing adult, and then as a studying musician, and then getting to like go out and play with these guys and meet them in person and find out that they're just incredible individuals. That's been the most rewarding part of all of it, probably, you know?
that's super amazing. And you touched on something that I wanted to bring up because the Zac Brown Band really does seem to touch a little bit on every different style of music, from country to a little bit of island to a little bit of blues. It's all there.
Yeah.
You guys find it, especially for you, do you find that it's hard to switch back and forth, or because you listen to so many different things that it's an easier thing that you can just adapt to what you're playing?
Yeah, I think if we were just like just a country band, then all of the creative minds within the band would be able to fulfill that role. But I don't think that we would be fulfilled as much personally and creatively. So the idea that we're able to jump around genres and everything is something that keeps us really on our toes. And especially with me, like I'll play a certain instrument on a song, and then we won't play that song for another 3 or 4 months, and then somebody will say, "Hey, let's play that song tonight." So I have to run and grab this instrument that I hadn't played in 3 months and like work it up, which kind of keeps you on your toes, you know. So I find it really rewarding, and everybody in this band is so pro, and they're such great guys, and they've studied, you know, music, and it's such in their heart and soul to where it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of see what you can pull off, really. I mean, we did some tunes. We decided to do Bohemian Rhapsody. It took us about 6 months to work it up, but it was one of those. A lot of times when you know do different covers or genres, it's almost like like a hurdle or something. You're like, well, fingers crossed we make it to the other end of this thing. Like, you know, hopefully everybody comes out unscathed, especially the first time you play it. You know.
Yeah. Now, that's something interesting because you guys tour, you guys play a lot of different stadiums and everything, and that's really cool. And you're the first person I've had on here who is a musician who does go on tour. So, walk us through a little bit of what that's like. How is that different compared to recording in a studio or just playing like a small show at a bar or something?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically it's just a bigger thing. I think that one of the reasons why I got so involved in the book writing thing is with getting more success and playing the bigger shows becomes like more a bigger audience, and there's more people to help. And I never took that for granted. I mean, I still do gigs with my band where I carry all my own gear in and things like that. But you know, once you get to a place where you're playing stadiums, you know, you have a crew and you have guys that carry your stuff in for you, and they set it up and everything. And that's kind of this bonkers, you know, thing that you get to, you were like, wow, you know, there's people who help make all of this stuff go down. So that's probably the biggest thing that first happens is when you start getting other people to help, and it's not just all on you. You know, that's one of the biggest things. But I mean, there was a lot of years and years of riding around in a van that smelled like dude. And you know what dude it was. You know, you're like, hey, man, you hadn't showered in a long time, dude number 2, you know, dude number 3, you
Oh,
know,
that's great.
because I mean, you're in a 15 passenger van with 6 guys and, you know, a trailer full of gear behind you. And, you know, you just played in Alabama and you're on your way back home, and, you know, it's 4 a.m. You're not going to get home until 6. And then you've got to like do stuff that day. So there was years and years in that. But as the success happened, we got our own tour bus. And, you know, we kind of were able to have a more comfortable touring experience. And that's something that I've never taken for granted, because I remember the days of being in the bus, you know, and all, or being in the van with, you know, smelling everybody, you know. So yeah, I guess the difference between being touring a band is we basically leave sometime middle of the week and we travel to a venue or fly to a venue, play there, get on a bus or a plane, fly to another venue, play there, get on a bus or plane and fly to another venue. and then we do probably 4 or 5 shows, 3 to 5 shows, and then we come home for like 2 or 3 days, and then we do that over and over and over again all year long. And so it's the part of it. I have a 2 and 3 year old daughters, and I think that the crazy thing is just being gone all the time. You get in this pattern of just kind of always being somewhere different. So you're really like somewhat like a pirate, where you're just like sailing the roads of America, from one destination to another, and it's an awesome experience, and I definitely miss it. But there's a somewhat of a silver lining right now with me being at home and being able to spend time with my kids. It's something that I haven't done that much, and so I'm here every day right now. It feels really cool. But like you said, not to kind of get off track, the idea of being in the studio is a completely different environment. You're there all day long. It's very long hours. Sometimes you sit around for 8 hours waiting for your turn to play on the song, or we record it all at one time where everybody's in one room, and you literally do 5 takes of the song or 2 takes of the song, and that's it. You move on to the next song, or you end up trying to be adventurous and creative in sound and, getting these certain elements down. And, you spend 4 hours trying to make the drums sound like one certain thing. So I enjoy the studio a lot, though. It's a very creative place, and it's very inspiring to know that you're going to create something that lasts forever. I think that's probably my favorite thing about playing music is writing songs that affect people and then recording those so that they go down in history, as being a part of people's lives. Because, music transcends time and space. It does some very metaphysical things to where, like, I can hear a certain song and it'll place me like in my college dorm when I was like 19 years old. I mean, I can really just be right back in that room because that was when I listened to that song,
Yeah.
So that's a really kind of magical part about the recording process.
No, I love that. And that's something I actually wanted to talk about because, especially with music, it's such a personal thing that can touch us in such amazing ways and can bring us back to different places that we don't even know how it does that.
Sure.
And a lot of kids listen to a lot of different stuff now. And how does it feel to know like there's a kid out there who could be hearing something that you were a part of or that you did, and that's going to make that impression on them?
Yeah, it's heavy. I try to stay in touch with the fans as much as I can via social media or going and hanging out after the show and like talking to people and, signing stuff or whatever else. And people share stories of, either going through kind of difficult times with their family and these songs kind of being connectors that really united them, or that, this is the song to where they've been battling this, and this is a song that they use as a tool to wake up every day and know that everything's going to be all right. Or this is like, dude, every time I go to the beach, me and my friends blast this, these 5 tunes, and it makes us feel like we're going to be, young forever. So there's just kind of all of these experiences that, and to me, it's probably, again, I keep saying the most rewarding, but I really love what I do. So I guess I can say that, but it's really rewarding to get to meet the fans and hear their stories about how the music affects them, because I'm a guy from a really small town in Georgia. I still can't believe I get to do what I do. So when I hear those stories, I'm like, really? Like, you came to see us and it affected you like that? Or you heard this song and it affected you like that? Really? Because I don't know. I know that we play big shows and we've sold albums and everything, but it's still kind of fascinating to think that it still has such a widespread, appeal, and it does affect people in that way, so it's so cool, really. And the books are kind of the same way. I've had some people write back from the books of the experiences that their kids have had with it. And, I wrote my first book I wrote is called Amy Giggles. This guy right here, it's about a girl with a really silly laugh. And I had this lady write me and said that her daughter had a cleft lip, and she would kind of put her hair over her face, or she would kind of cover her face when she was talking to people. And after reading this book and finding out this girl in the book, Amy Giggles, had confidence in her weird laugh, she now, doesn't do it near as much. And I was just like, oh my God, you got to be kidding. I mean, one day I wake up and that story doesn't exist. I open my Facebook messages, and then there's, 5 paragraphs about this, in a picture of this girl who's, gaining confidence through something that I wrote, which is just amazing, man. I mean, I guess that's what I'm here to do, is affect people in a positive way, and try to be creative while doing it. That's kind of my life's journey.
Yeah. And that's something I wanted to talk about, because the whole different avenue with books compared to music is such an amazing thing. And the fact that you're using your platform to help make a difference in kids' lives and help them, feel better about themselves, I think that's a wonderful thing. So I have to ask, where did you get the idea that you wanted to start writing these?
Well, I talked to my mom in the very beginning. I wasn't really interested in fame, and there's nothing cooler than a guy who has success talking about how like being successful is like a burden. So believe me, this is not what I'm about to get into. But I didn't really like being like considered, somebody who was famous or something like that. So when all of that happened, I moved back to my hometown. I bought a small little house on a river, and I went fishing with my dad for 3 years and just kind of waited for it to pass over, kind of. And during that process, I was telling my mom, I was like, I just don't feel comfortable. Like I'm not myself anymore. And she said, well, why don't you start giving back to people? That's always a really good way to help. And I thought, wow, what an interesting idea. Why don't I do that? So I needed something to give back, and I wanted it to be something creative for me. So I decided to write some stories. This one story came out of it. And then I just kind of released the book, not knowing what was going to happen. I always wanted to be a writer, so I thought it would be a lot easier to write like a 30-page children's book than it would be like a 500-page novel that gets re-edited 1,000 times before you ever even, it ever sees the light of day. So anyway, I started writing these books, and they started really connecting with teachers. And then and they were using them in their classroom, and then that turned into me getting more involved with the education system and more involved with going to schools and talking to kids, about how to follow their passion, whether it be high school students or college students, or even pre-K kids. So it kind of just led down this path of it was kind of the right thing to do, because I follow politics, and I'm an adult, and I keep up with what's going on in the country. But like, for some reason, I want helping with kids is such an instant gratification, and that it's going to make a difference. Whereas like, adults can bog things down, and it gets complicated. And I want to be the person who makes a difference, like right now, like I want to know that like I'm making a kid feel confident right now, where I'm changing the way a kid feels, right now, kind of thing. So I guess there's somewhat of a slightly selfish part of it, but I also really, really try to focus on remaining young at heart and my creativity. I try to approach things from a kid-like perspective, to where I try to view things as kids. And I find that hanging around kids, especially my daughters, like the new book that I just wrote called Can You Touch a Color, which is going to come out later this year. We were sitting in the car one day, and she goes, Dad, can you touch a color? And I was like, I don't know. Let me think about this. I mean, scientifically it's light, so you kind of can and you kind of can't. Objects are colors, so you kind of can. So we went through this whole thing, but I was like, wow, what an interesting concept. I never would have thought of that. And so I wrote an entire book about colors and, and all of this, and how they make you feel and whatnot. So
That's amazing. And I love that perspective of not losing that childish side, because I think that's what helps creativity even a little bit more, because we tend to overanalyze things as adults, and kids are more kind of like that carefree attitude.
Yeah. Well, I'm careful. I'm very thoughtful about my creativity and the music and everything. Like, perfect example is a lot of times when I do projects with people, I don't have conversations with them about it at first. I want to see just what they're going to come up with, like an improvisational kind of approach, because once I give them information, that information is always stored. So I did a book with a guy called When You're Feeling Sick, and we never talked the entire time on purpose. I didn't want to. I didn't want to have any involvement with him. I wanted him to cut loose, because I went through a lot of portfolios, and he was the one that got the gig because of his style. And I didn't want to bring him in for his style and then make him change his style to be something that I had in my head. You know, it's like I wanted him to do what he was good at because that was his thing. So, I had one conversation with him and I said, hey, man, we're going to do this kind of like a Miles Davis album where you're just going to come in and do your thing. And then I'm going to give you like a couple of, it's a little busy on the left side of the page. Can you tone it down? The monster's a little scarier than it needs to be. Can we make it a little more friendly of a monster kind of thing? But it was on purpose. And another example is I don't learn Stevie Wonder songs. I don't want to know how to play Stevie Wonder songs. He's my favorite artist, and I purposefully don't learn how to play him because when I listen to him, once I know how the song goes, and I know I'm going to think about my hands, and I'm not just going to listen to it. That adventure of being just a listener will be over. Yeah. So I decided that as of right now, which has been lasting for probably like 15 years, I don't learn Stevie Wonder songs, you know?
No, I totally get that. And that's such an important thing. What was it? I think I know what it was. I had David Benoit on the show, and he had a similar thing where he said he wouldn't learn from any of the people that he liked listening to because you lose the magic of it then.
Yeah, you got to be careful of that stuff, I think, you know?
Yeah. So with the books, it's a different process than music and a little bit different process than touring. So can you walk us through a little bit of what it takes to get a book done?
Yeah, it's a very unusual process. I've only done one book with I did one book with Random House. The other, 4 books that I've created have been self-published. So a lot of it's me, writing a book, finding an illustrator, working out that whole deal, going back and forth with them on, what the characters look like, how the world that they live in looks like, what the kind of style of the drawing and characters are going to be. And then I take that and move that into the next level of meeting with my kind of printer liaison buddy, who we talk about the size of the book, the way the paper is going to, what paper weight we're going to use, and just the physical aspects of the book. And then we get, printing quotes on. So I'm kind of the writer, the editor, the, project manager, the whole thing. But luckily I've always found really creative illustrators who make the process very fun and easy to do and work with. But I'm also somebody who's very flexible as well. Like I want to allow people to be creative. I'm not trying to be in control or stifling, so like if they have an idea, I want to hear it, kind of thing. And I try to keep it open and flowing in that manner. But yeah, it's pretty difficult. I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean, I spend, almost every other day working on some of these books in my off time, for a year or two until they come out. And so like I did this book, it's called Behind the Little Red Door, which is probably my favorite one that I've written so far. My aunt had a really amazing personality, and she had a toy room that she built a small door to get into. But she had like big stuff in the room. Like there was a big bed that obviously couldn't go through this little door. And when we would go over to her house, she'd be like, do you guys want to go through the toy room? And she was like, it's through that little door right there. and we would, have to squat down and go through the little door, and then you would go in there, and there'd be like, Christmas lights hanging up and all these toys, and it was just like this weird magical world. And so I decided to write a book about that, and then that kind of turned into this thing that I just spent the last 2 years doing, which is pretty crazy. So I did this social emotional kit. So this entire kind of educational kit that has the CD that I did called Music for Tiny Humans. The book has activity cards, and it has this really cool puppet. They're like the Red Door puppet, and you can change the face on it to make it happy or sad, And then if you open it up, it's like you can do like a storyboard on the inside. So that just came out. I spent 2 years on working on that thing, and it just came out. So it's really cool to write these books and then know that they're about to turn into some kind of educational, instructional kit for social emotional needs. And I mean, man, considering what we're going through right now, kids understanding how they're feeling and being able to express that is a huge deal, I mean, and probably you can attest to this, that some of the most creative people that you've ever met generally have like very strong life skills. I mean, there's some that are like a mess. Don't get me wrong. There's some people who like, they do one thing and they don't tie their shoes, and they, they put on their pants and that's about it. And then they like do what they do. And then you find other people who are really good at what they do, who, have really strong fundamental foundational skills as a human. Like they know how they feel at times. They don't act erratic, in social situations. They, know how to talk about how they feel. And I grew up in a household where that was very, very common. My parents had very strong social emotional skills and relayed that to me. And I think that that's been one of the main things that I've had, the success that I've had, is I know how to interact with people. I know how I feel. I know how to pick up on how somebody else is feeling. And I think that every kid deserves the right to, whether they were raised in a home where that was fundamental, they have the right to have those skills, because I think that it takes you a long way in life,
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing part of that process, because I feel like a lot of stuff that we see and we hear and we read, it's all right there. So it's deceptively simple for us because it's just in front of us. We never think about what happens to make it there. So
yeah, it's a lot of work. My wife definitely is like, so you're doing another book, huh? I'm like, yeah.
Now, this is a question I love getting to ask because it's a rather fun one. A lot of times when I do Comic-Cons, I'll have kids come up and ask me, and they're like, do you have hobbies outside of work? Because it just kind of seems like all you do is work. And it's like, I feel like a lot of times, especially with social media, it's portrayed that the only thing that people do is focus on what their job is. So do you have any hobbies that kids could know about that shows them that it's okay to do stuff outside of work?
Yeah, so I really like getting outdoors a lot. I like hiking, going to waterfalls, camping, fishing, things of that nature. I don't do any hunting or anything like that really, but so I like doing that. I'm really into cars. I don't have like a large collection of cars or anything like that, but I love like reading about like the new Corvette that just came out, or or things of that nature. So I really like cars. I go to car shows sometime. I walk around and like, man, wouldn't it be cool to drive that thing or whatever, and besides music being a hobby, the books being kind of another creative platform, I recently really got head over heels into photography and videography.
Ooh,
Yeah, and it's just
one.
so I carry my camera everywhere I go, and I film my kids now, and I take pictures of them, and I'm really into that as like a kind of a new creative way to express myself or adventure into. I love movies, I love stories, and I just recently got into public speaking. So going and like getting in front of people and being like, so this is what I think about this, and trying to like, make it fun and positive. And, I think that I have like either a coach or a preacher in me from a past lifetime or something. You know, I have this like, we can do it, guys. Everybody just has to believe and believe in yourself. We can do it, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, but, you know, I think outside of that, some of my kind of other hobbies would be based off of being adventurous with my kids and finding out what they're into. You know, we build a lot of forts and we build a lot of forts and come up with a lot of different worlds of like what's inside the fort. Like we come up with different languages that we talk while we're in there, and everybody has nicknames and this whole thing. So you know, I have, like I said, I had a 2-year-old daughter named Millie Mercy and a 3-year-old daughter named Hattie Milan. So I spend a lot of time with them, you know, joking around and stuff. So
Well, that's super cool. Thank you so much for sharing those because I think that's always such an important thing because a lot of times things get skewed by social media and by things we see on the television that it's hard to remember that it's okay to do other things.
yeah, I think the other thing though to kind of clearly mention is that I stay really connected with the people that I grew up with. So like I still have the same friends that I did that I went to high school with, you know. Um, So when I have time off, I go back to my hometown that has like 20,000 people in it, and I sit on my mom's front porch and talk with them and I eat peaches. And my buddy will come over and he'll sit out there and talk with me and my mom and dad, and we'll just, you know, talk for an hour or whatever, you know, or I'll go over to his house and see him and his kids or whatnot. So that's probably a part of my life that is a little different from people, because I meet people and they're like, I don't talk to anybody that I went to high school with, you know, whereas like I'm still friends with the majority of the people that I used to be friends with, you know. So I guess kind of trying to staying humble and growing at the same time is a big part of my journey as well, you know.
No, I love that. Now, this question I love getting to ask because it does really touch with music, I think. The industry is a very competitive place. You have to compete for your song to be at number one. You have to compete so that way you stay relevant and everything. And that's kind of a hard thing. And a lot of different areas in the entertainment industry go through it. So for you, do you find that it's hard with the competitive spirit that gets bred, or do you find like you kind of want to like reach out and befriend these other people who are awesome musicians that the industry may say like, oh, you're up against them?
I personally don't believe in creativity when it comes to, I mean, I don't believe in competitiveness when it comes to creativity. I just think that they don't have the really any space within each other. You know, it's like, how do you compare somebody's art to somebody else's art in a way to where at some point somebody wins or whatever? And I know that, you know, like I've won a Grammy. Actually won 3 Grammys, and I'm very, very thankful for the experience. And I believe that the Academy does a lot of great things for music and the industry in general. And I would never take away that experience. But at the same time, if somebody else would have won, then I would have been just as happy for them. You know, if that makes any sense. Because to
Definitely.
me, it's not about winning or losing. It's about the ride. You know, so and the experience of being creative. So that being said, I really spend a lot of my time reaching out to younger musicians and kind of mentoring them. You know, somebody calls and is like, hey man, um, my son's a guitar player. You know, I'll talk with them and tell them like, you know, point them in this direction, or say, send me their song and let me check them out, you know. And if they're cool, then I might end up teaching them lessons for a little while, or getting on the phone with them while they're in their recording studio, you know, and saying, hey, the drums are way too loud and for this song or whatever. Just give my a little bit of advice. And I try to be very careful not to like, um, you know, give room for people to be creative and not like for me to somehow or another take over. But um, yeah, I mean, I just kind of from the very beginning, like I went to college and there was first seat in guitar and there was second seat in guitar, and my roommate was always first seat, and I could care less. I was like, I never one day in my life was I like, I'm striving to be first seat. I was like, my roommate, who's one of my best friends, has first seat. I have second seat. Who cares? You know, if I wanted first seat, I could probably try to get it, but I don't care. So it doesn't matter, you know? And
No,
that's one thing that's really awesome. Clay, the other guitar player in the band, he's a multi-instrumentalist. And a lot of people go, do you guys ever get competitive? And there's not been one day in our lives to where we've, you know, kind of tried to show each other up or you know, whatever. I'm like, do you want to play organ on this song or do you want me to play guitar? And we have like a 30-second conversation and he's like, you try guitar, I'll try organ. I'm like, okay, cool. You know?
I love that. And I think it's really important because it's such a thing that is kind of misleading to see so much on social media and everything that we talk about, that it's okay not to be competitive with people, because it's such a thing now where it's like you can't enjoy what you do if you're not being better than someone else. And I feel like it's important for kids to know that there is room for everyone, that we can all kind of do our thing.
Sure. I mean, I think some of my favorite artists are people who embrace the idea of other artists being, you know, in their world and kind of having success and embracing them. I know that Zac has always been really, really good about finding up and coming artists and getting them to open up and trying to give them, you know, an avenue to our fans and things of that nature. And, you know, the Foo Fighters are a perfect example of that too. You know, they have like this last tour, they had different, you know, people come up and play songs with them from the audience. You know, I just thought that was like the coolest thing ever, you know. Talking about like some kid's dream, you know, a 13-year-old kid gets to play drums with the Foo Fighters, you know, it's like, oh, what an amazing thing.
They just continue to be such a cool group over all these years.
Yeah.
So just a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
This one I absolutely love getting to ask, because kids kind of think like once you've made it per se, where people know like your music, your writing, your acting, that you kind of like don't have a dream after that. But you've had the chance to work with a lot of cool people, I'm sure, and had the chance to do a lot of cool things. But for you, if there was somebody out there that you could play with or that you could write with, you name it, what would you do?
That's a very interesting thing because we wrote a bucket list down like maybe 10 years ago. And, you know, one of it was to play like Fenway Park, and that happened. And, you know, one of it was to get like, you know, a #1 album, and that happened. And then was to get a Grammy, and then that happened. And so we crossed off. I mean, I'm just insanely lucky to be somebody who was capable of making a list with a bunch of other guys that I deeply care about and love. And then, you know, through group effort, we were able to kind of accomplish this list. And at a certain point, we all looked at each other and we were like, we have to have new dreams. You know, I mean, really, we were like, we need to like, you know, come up with some new dreams. And for me personally, one of my new dreams is that I want to be a part of writing a song that gets played in a movie. So I'm really into writing children's music kind of on my own outside of the band. And I would love nothing more than to write a song that plays in like an animated, you know, motion picture. I mean, I just think it's the coolest thing ever. So to me, I think my new dreams in life are to continue down exploring my art of like storytelling, whether that's in children's books form or more adult fiction, or if it's screenplays, or if it's you know, an animated series with the characters that I create, or things of that nature, and also combining the music element to that, to where music that I write would be involved in, you know, because over the last 5 years, I've gotten more into photography and more into videography, and I'm so excited about it. And I got to peek behind the curtain and see how big of a deal it is and how much time and energy and people and money and all this goes into it. So, you know, having a song that I write play in a movie, and going and sitting down with like my friends and family and having popcorn, and when it comes on, we're like, that's it, you know, it would just be the coolest. So that's my dream right now, you know, is to make that happen. So if anybody's watching this or listening to this, you got some connections,
Call
call me.
Yeah.
Coy, Coy.
That's a super cool dream, and that's such a unique one. I haven't had anybody really talk about something like that yet, so I think that's a super cool thing to touch on.
And I think as far as my dream with the band goes, the dream of the band is constantly recreating ourselves and allowing ourselves to stay true to our fan base, and but also kind of constantly explore new realms of our own creativity and songwriting and production and things of that nature, and which is what we've been doing for a pretty good while. So um, um, but really, I think my idea or dream with the band would somehow or another to be able to connect with the fans on a deeper level. Like have an experience to where you get to sit down with guys one on one and kind of, talk with them about like what the music means to them, and them have like a memorable, exchange kind of thing, instead of like a high five in a parking lot as you're going to the bus, kind of thing. And
That's
that's cool. Social media allows you to do that too, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a cool thing, especially when you're able to talk to people who your work has affected and touched, because it really reminds you of why your work is important.
Yeah. 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 If nobody ever tells you that they like your stuff, or, that you're awesome, or that, what you did affected me, then I could see it being a little bit of a lonely place.
Definitely.
I'm
Oh,
like a puppy dog though, man. All you have to do is pat my head and tell me I'm a good boy, and I go a long way. So I tell my
that
wife
might be
that
the
all
best
the
thing I've heard on this show so
time. I tell
far.
my wife that all the time. I'm like, just a hug and some you're a good guy. Man, that'll last me for weeks at a time.
That's fantastic. By far, that might be the best thing somebody has said on this show. So,
Yeah, I'm a dog.
last question for you.
Okay, cool.
There's a kid out there who wants to be a writer now, who wants to be a musician, who are interested in learning more about these things, or even wants to learn a little bit more about, advocating for education and everything. What is the one thing that you would want them to walk away from this knowing?
A few things. One is you don't get anywhere without hard work. Anybody that you've ever met in your life, yourself included, the hours that you have to spend to become capable of doing things on a high level are just so insane. But there's so much enjoyment and so much satisfaction knowing that you're working on yourself every day to become better at something. So whether it's skateboarding or drawing or writing music or singing or plotting out your entrepreneurship of taking over the world with, some kind of technology that you want to create, or if it's even giving back to people, you have to be able to put in the hard work, and that comes first. So like, if you want to make it in the music industry and you're lazy, then good luck. But that being said, if you got the hard work in you, then you have to focus on playing to your strengths. Perfect example is that I'm not the strongest with grammar. So, and it was something that was a very big insecurity of mine when like writing letters to people or writing emails to people, or when I would create these stories, I would always have to get people to proofread them. And it became this thing to where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like ever be good enough at grammar to where I can like do this on this level. And then it hit me. I was like, why do I care about grammar? Somebody else is good at that. I'll let them handle it. And then I'll just kind of continuously write. And this will be part of my process. I will be the creator. I will create the story, which other people can't do. And then I'll let somebody help me. I will let somebody help me, and then that will be able to get me to the finish line. So I think, a couple things is like, for kids out there, is like, don't let the things that are small, that are hurdles in your life, don't let those get in the way of you accomplishing your bigger dream, because everybody's insecure at something. Everybody, I mean, actors, people that you think would be just like The Rock. I'm sure that he has some insecurity. He seems like the most biggest, buffest, most secure dude you would ever meet in your life. Coolest. But I'm sure if you go to talk to him, like, what's your biggest insecurity? He's like, somebody not liking me, you know what I mean? Or something. And that's something he constantly has to face. I don't know him and I don't know that's his thing, but I'm just giving it an example. So you have to learn to like push those things over to a side, allow people to help you with those things, and allow the bigger picture of what your strength is to rise to the surface and what you can ultimately do. And I think if you always focus on, and this is kind of a Mr. Rogers thing, but if you always focus on making sure that your intentions are to help other people, whether it's through music or through your art or through your storytelling or whatever, if you focus on the idea of this is going to be a message that you're going to share with people to connect, then that's a very powerful thing. And also, and another thing is man, you're going to have so many doors get shut in front of your face, but then you're going to find somebody. If you don't stop, something will happen. I promise you. If you don't stop, one day you're going to get a call and somebody's going to say, you know, like what happened with me. I mean, I knew Zac, we were friends. He called one day and he said, hey, I would love for your band to open up for my band. And I was like, okay, cool. And he said, and while you're at it, you should leave your keys on stage and play keyboard with us. And I was like, okay. So I'm kind of playing with you guys now. And he was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. I've been playing with him for 14 years now, you know? So it's like, if I would have said, no, I just want to be in my band, you know, so I took the opportunity. So you got to kind of be able to be flexible and go with it, but you never know when somebody's going to call and say, hey, I heard about you. And then you just got to be willing to step up to the plate, and it's going to be scary. It's going to be weird. You're going to be, your stomach's going to be in knots, but the more you do it, the more practice you get. And the other thing is you have to always be nice to everybody. You know, you never know. Don't ever think that you've made it or you're cool or you're whatever else. Cause soon as you go and like bark at somebody and think that you're cool in some way or another, then that's going to be the person who's like, should we hire Coy for this songwriting thing? No, he was mean to me one time, you know, strike his name off the list. You know, you just never know. So I just make it a rule to go above and beyond and try to be open-hearted and creative and share myself with everybody and be and my main intention is to try to share with that open heart, you know? So if you got that in you, man, it's the key to success for sure. I think so, you know?
Well, thank you so much for sharing those. And I appreciate so much you coming on the show and talking about all this stuff. It was absolutely incredible. But now comes my favorite part of the show where I get to show you what I was able to do off of you while
drum roll.
I hope that the computer doesn't skew the color because sometimes the lights mess with it a little bit, but I'm going to try to get it up in there.
Nice.
There we go.
Wow, I'm handsome.
Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show, and thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. Again, I am your host and in-house artist, Aaron Leffler. Catch you next time on The Drawing Board. I don't have one of those click things yet, but my hands want to work.
You do just as fine.